The National Council for the Training of Journalists chose Belfast as a setting for the culmination of its 60th anniversary celebrations. The city also played host to the NCTJ's 4th Annual Journalism Skills Conference. Delegates had hoped to visit Parliament buildings at Stormont, but the plans had to be changed at the last minute due to the day of strike action organised by public sector unions. The packed two-day programme got underway at the Europa Hotel, where Junior Stormont Minister Jonathan Bell gave the welcoming address.
I think there is a need for resourcefulness and enthusiasm, for a tenacity to pursue a story, no matter how uncomfortable that it can make anybody feel, or how uncomfortable it can make the even politicians feel. Voltaire said it right. We may not like what you say, but we will defend your right to say it. And those are critical aspects of journalism. You provide a vital part. You are a touchstone of any true democracy.
After lunch, the delegates travelled a short distance across town to the new Belfast Metropolitan Campus in Titanic Quarter for a series of workshops covering topics such as politics and the media, digital skills and technology in journalism, and a discussion about regulation and ethics.
I think the training in journalism has always been an essential part of the industry. Now we're dealing with changing times. We don't have the same level of recruitment as we used to. In fact, in some areas there's practically no recruitment at all. But training remains vital. You have to use a little more imagination than might previously have been the case, and people who are training to become journalists may not necessarily end up working for newspapers or broadcasters. They may be looking at opportunities online. They may be looking at opportunities in the world of PR and communications. There'll always be openings for people with skills in journalism, but times are changing, and papers like the Irish News have difficult budgetary issues to face. But I think it's very important to engage with the NCTJ. I completed an NCTJ course myself back in the 1970s, and in those days there was a recession. In those days there were very few jobs. We came out of it, luckily. Hopefully we'll come out of this one, but things will be different. Things will have changed, and we have to be in as good a position as possible to cope. So this 60th anniversary conference for the NCTJ forms a central part of that process.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here today and to assist the NCTJ in its endeavours. As I mentioned, I've got my certificate hanging proudly in my office from many years ago when I trained with Thompson Regional Newspapers. So obviously today, coming to Northern Ireland, the interest was in a number of related issues about coverage of politics and indeed the one about covering paramilitaries. Have things moved on? And it's a challenge which we face continually here. Thankfully, not as much as we did in the past. The reality today is that there are still groups out there with the ability to kill people, and therefore, in some sense, we need to reflect, why is this killing going on? And the question really was, do we put these people on air? I was explaining that still we're in a position where we feel it's perfectly correct to talk to these people to find out what their motives are, but then the debate comes as to whether you actually put them in front of a TV screen. If we felt we were going to achieve anything by that, in other words pinning them down, then yes, that's worth assessing, but it has to be done on a case-by-case situation.
Public Achievement is a charity that works mainly with young people, and it tends to work in the more difficult areas of Northern Ireland. And the project I work on, which is called WIMPS.tv, stands for Where is My Public Servant? And I suppose the objective of that is to connect young people and politicians, for young people to question politicians and to teach politicians about young people and what concerns them. And it's also about making change, particularly in smaller communities. So that's really, in a nutshell, the work we do in WIMPS and Public Achievement.
Okay, and then again, David, just give us an overview of what the main message you had here this afternoon.
I suppose there are a number of things. I was saying the most important one really is that there's an awful lot of social media around, and if a journalist wants to use social media, they have to understand it, not just use it. Don't start a Twitter account or a Facebook account. Try to understand what journalism is, because there are lots of other people doing their version of journalism, and it can become popular. Journalists do it better. They've got the training. But in a world where there is so much noise and so much social media and so much on the web, how do you filter out what's good as a consumer, and how as a journalist do you make sure that your voice is heard? And the way you do that is by ensuring that you understand how social media works.
The following day, the University of Ulster's York Street campus was the setting for another series of workshops covering areas such as financial and economic reporting, health reporting, international journalism and lifestyle journalism.
Gary, we're here today to give a rundown of what we do as a business team on the Belfast Telegraph, and then to look into some of the issues that are facing lecturers when it comes to training journalists to be financial reporters. We've been looking at whether they need to do specialist financial courses to try and make sure that they're well prepared to go onto a business desk in a newspaper, whether they maybe need to do a compulsory course or whether they need to do it as an option. We've discussed quite a bit about how it would be a great idea for everybody that's learning a journalism course to be able to touch on at least some sort of business so that they're equipped to maybe jump into a business desk and help out at a moment's notice without being scared about the issues that maybe are raised during their time there.
Well, essentially what I think people want to find out is how much financial reporting should be taught on courses training journalists. And my view is that there needs to be maybe an element to take the fear factor away for journalists today so that they realise that this is something that is very much part of the mainstream these days. And that there should maybe also then be an option for those who want to explore it further to have more specialist knowledge to train them up on things like looking at accounts or looking at statistics or economic theory, all of those things. But for the average journalist, I think there's no harm in giving them a smattering of an understanding as to what it's all about.
Okay, I think with the lifestyle workshop today, what I was trying to bring to the table was the business of being a freelance journalist and a magazine editor of 3 titles, what that involves, and ultimately being flexible and versatile and trying to be everything to everyone, which is perhaps not maybe taught or emphasised in the course, that when in reality it's about making money and trying to pay the bills, and sometimes if you're not a staff journalist you have to try and spread yourself across several titles. So I was trying to emphasise that fact.
I think one of the important things about lifestyle journalism is that it really requires exactly the same skills as to be a hard news journalist, but possibly a little bit extra in getting the human interest out of a story, getting the little quirk that will make it your feature, your brand for whatever publication or broadcast medium that you're doing it for.